everyone, welcome back to my channel Yosmos. Space exploration is my passion, a place that answers all your space questions. I'm the Yosmonaut Yash Mittal. Why don't you buckle up as we launch this episode? Walking all around may not be of a great value. However, a walk in space, spacewalk, is a big deal. Today we talk about the first spacewalk as well as the first rockets sent by the different space agencies. The first spacewalk in March 1965, at the age of 30, Soviet cosmonaut Alexei Leonov made the first spacewalk in history, beating out American rival Ed White on Gemini 4 by almost 3 months. Now, the first woman to spacewalk. On July 25, 1984, Savitskaya became the first woman to spacewalk, conducting EVA outside the Salyut 7 space station for 3 hours and 35 minutes, during which she cut the weird metals in space along with her colleague Vladimir Zahinibekov. Of the 57 Soviet or Russian spacewalkers, we have the first man-made satellite Mir. Despite an array of problems, the first space station, Salyut 1, made important progress towards living and working in space long-term and paved the way for future space stations. Launched by the Soviet Union in 1971, the port orbited the Earth almost 3,000 times during its 175 days in space before it was intentionally crashed into the Pacific Ocean. First Indian rocket. The launch of the first sounding rocket from Thamba near Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala on 21st November 1963 marked the beginning of the Indian space program. Sounding rockets made it possible to probe the atmosphere in situ using rocket-borne instrumentation. Let's know about the first rocket by USA. The Jupiter C, America's first successful space vehicle, launched the free world's first scientific satellite, Explorer 1, into orbit on January 31, 1958. The Explorer Satellite 1 is attached to a single solid propellant rocket motor, which served as the launch vehicle's fourth stage. Moving on, we have Russia's first rocket. Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite, was launched on an R-7 rocket on 4th October 1957. The basic R-7 rocket evolved with the addition of increasing capable upper stages. Next we have the Chinese, who sent their first rocket. Its range was 590 kilometers, weighing 20.5 tons and propelled with liquid oxygen and alcohol. China's first ever T-7 sounding rocket was successfully launched from the Nanhui launch site on February 19, 1960. Next we have the first European rocket. Europe decided to build its own low-cost, solid-fueled rocket called Vega. This rocket can place satellites weighing 300 to 2000 kgs into different orbits. Vega's first launch from Kourou took place on 13 February 2012. Let's know about the Japanese's first rocket. An aerospace startup in Japan has successfully launched a rocket into space. It's the first private developed Japanese spacecraft to reach orbit. The unmanned rocket named Momo-3 took off Saturday from a test site in Taiki on the northern Japanese island of Hokkaido. Now we have the first person to orbit the Earth. As we talked in a previous video, Yuri Gagarin was not only the first person to fly in space but lasted 108 minutes as he circled the Earth for a little more than one orbit in the Soviet Union's Vostok spacecraft. Can you imagine floating in the vacuum of space with nothing anchoring you to a spacecraft? Let's know about the first person to do an untethered spacewalk. On February 7th, 1984, an astronaut Bruce McCandless made history performing a spacewalk during STS-41B with no lifelines tethering him to Space Shuttle Challenger using the Manned Maneuvering Unit MMU. McCandless and astronaut Bob Stewart completed separate untethered spacewalks during the mission, both venturing more than 300 feet from Challenger. During elections, one's vote can play an important part in making the change. This was taken seriously by our next astronaut on the list. He is the first person to cast a vote from space. Wolf became the first American to vote from space, thanks to legislation in Texas, where most astronauts live. That was signed into law in 1997, nearly 20 years later. The process for voting from orbit remains the same, and it's pretty easy. Wolf doesn't recall what was on the ballot that year, but he remembers how moved he felt. He said, "I voted alone up in space, very alone. The only English speaker up there, and it was nice to have an English ballot, something from America." Wolf added, "It made me feel closer to the earth and like the people of the earth actually cared about me up there." Moving on, next we have the first space tourist. Dennis Anthony Tito is an American engineer and entrepreneur, most widely known as the first space tourist to fund his own trip into space. In mid-2001, he spent nearly 8 days in orbit as a crew member of ISS, a visiting mission to the International Space Station. You know a lot on this topic. Thanks for watching. Share and subscribe, and don't forget, your likes will encourage me